It is Monday, the 17th of June, 2024 at Protestia Studios. This is your intelligence briefing coming to you from Protestia.com, where you can go to find all of the latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. Sign up for our insurgency email blast and support us financially over at patreon.com/Protestia. We would very much appreciate it. We got a lot of headlines today. We got some catching up to do. Let's get right into it. First headline at Protestia.com. Lutheran Church Pride Sunday message sending Jesus to earth is God's way of coming out and, quote, speaking his truth. That would be God, I would assume. This is Christ the King Lutheran Church in Houston, Texas, led by Reverend Dr. Jennifer Hope Tringali and Sergio Rodriguez, the latter of whom is a graduate of Baylor and the quote-unquote pastor of community living. According to his bio on the church's website, he currently lives with his boyfriend Justin in Houston with their 2 cats and several plants. Okay, during the church's June 10th sermon, Pastor Rodriguez preached on Jesus, asking who his true family was, describing Jesus coming to earth as an example of God coming out and speaking his truth in solidarity with the LGBTQ quote-unquote community. You can read more about this over at Protestia.com. There is a link if you can possibly tolerate listening to this and want to. We'll point you towards it, but suffice to say, I think most of you are probably going to take our word for it on this one. Next headline at Protestia.com. Megachurch pastor Robert Morse of Gateway Church responds to accusations of child sex abuse, saying it was kissing and petting. That's what it was back in the day. Robert Morse, the senior pastor of Gateway Church, the largest church in America by number, which has more than 100,000 people spread across several campuses, has been accused of years-long child sexual abuse of a 12-year-old girl, according to an article from the Wartburg Watch, which has spoken to the alleged victim. Cindy Clemishire says she was 11 years old when she met Robert Morse, who at the time was a married 20-year-old evangelist. According to her, he started to preach at her home church and eventually became friends with the family, including going on trips together. And that changed on Christmas night. Looks like Christmas 1982. You can see her testimony over here at Protestia.com. We have links to the original articles and things like that, and as well as, I believe, some links to know a little bit more about the prosperity gospel that is preached over at Gateway Church by Robert Morris and others. Read more about that. Head over to Protestia.com to read the rest. Next headline at Protestia.com. Churches close in the Congo as Islamic State massacres 80 Christians. The murderous Islamic State has claimed responsibility for a brazen attack in the Democratic Republic of Congo's North Kivu province last week, which saw the Islamic State-affiliated Allied Democratic Forces coordinate a massacre through multiple small villages and kill an estimated 80 Christians, according to Open Doors, an organization that documents the persecution of Christians. The attack happened between the 4th and the 8th of June in several villages, the deadliest day being the 7th of June when armed militants attacked Masala, Mahihi, and Kimi, I believe it's pronounced, killing more than 50 believers. Homes have also been burned. Several people are reported missing. Bad news indeed, as we continue to pray for Christians across the globe still facing the kind of persecution that you and I would find hard to imagine at this point. You can go read more about this over at Protestia.com. Next headline, Kirk Franklin dances with Kamala Harris, kisses her hand after she touts her pro-abortion and pro-LGBTQ record. If you weren't sure that Kirk Franklin was a snake and a wolf and someone not to be trusted at all with anything spiritual, and not too much musical either, I think this gets down to proof of the point. Kirk Franklin continues to reap the rewards of his newfound resurgence following his successful collaboration with Maverick City Music, this time pulling Democrat Vice President Kamala Harris up on stage during the White House's second annual Juneteenth concert to dance and sing with her. It's not the first time Franklin has done this. He previously called up Whoopi Goldberg from The View to dance with and join them in performing a gospel song. During this event, Kamala Harris listed off her party's recent accomplishments, including making Juneteenth a national holiday, passing gun safety laws, seeking student loan forgiveness, appointing a black Supreme Court justice, and defending and promoting LGBTQ freedoms and a woman's right to murder her baby through abortion. Despite her praising and defending the slaughter of tens of millions of babies and the continued destruction of the family unit, Kirk Franklin did not rebuke her, but rather made her the belle of the ball, dancing and singing with her in a rendition of his song, I Smile. Let's see if we could see a little bit of this. Disgusting. Absolutely filthy and disgusting. All right, I think that's quite enough of that. You can see more of that if you can tolerate any more than what we just showed you over at Protestia's X account, or head over to protestia.com to read the rest of the article. But suffice to say, Kirk Franklin is showing his true corrupt theological colors. Next headline at Protestia.com, SBC elites celebrate tolerance of female pastors. This coming from Evangelical Dark Web. Bain once said, "They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother." As a quote from Batman, it looks like this is exactly what was said to FBC Alexandria as thousands voted to kick them out of the SBC, while also, for some reason, voting against a ban on female pastors. FBC Alexandria was not booted from the Southern Baptist Convention for having female pastors, but for being too open about having female pastors. FBC Alexandria is at least being honest, which is more than can be said about Brent Leatherwood's church, which is also, I believe, Jonathan Howe's church, and many others. I think they're two different churches, but they both kind of do the same thing. Many other SBC elites. Last week, SBC elites took a victory lap in the form of a Baptist Press article titled "Doctrinal Fidelity Without Methodological Conformity." We've also referenced that in our latest over at Protestia.com. The article openly admits that female pastors exist in the SBC and that that's a good thing. You can read more about this by going over to Protestia under the headline "SBC Elites Celebrate Tolerance of Female Pastors" and click over to the Evangelical Dark Web article to read more. Next headline at Protestia.com. Tony Evans' ministry reverses course, cancels preaching crews following pressure over an unnamed sin. It's still unnamed as far as we can tell. I have my theories, but I'm not going to share them with you without more evidence. Following the revelation that Pastor Tony Evans is temporarily stepping down from his ministry role on account of unnamed sin, his teaching ministry has reversed course and now says a planned week-long Christian cruise through the Riviera featuring the prominent pastor will not proceed after initially insisting it still would. Last week, false teacher Tony Evans of the 9,500-member Dallas megachurch Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship announced that he was stepping away from public ministry on account of unnamed sins he committed years ago. While Evans was stepping down from church ministry, he did not intend to step down from all ministry, apparently. Evans' personal teaching and preaching ministry, The Urban Alternative, has a Christian cruise plan that would feature Evans and his children, and a little sin wasn't going to stop it. According to the Christian Post, they were planning for November 9th through the 16th, and it would still go on even after Evans stepped away from the helm of his church. Interesting to try to put together why somehow he would be disqualified temporarily or otherwise from the pulpit and yet be just fine teaching as long as it's on a cruise ship. You can read more about this over at Protestia.com. It is apparently canceled at this point. Next headline over at Protestia.com, Dallas Jenkins defends The Chosen, Season 4 shocking plot twist. I saw this headline and wondered what could be a plot twist about a narrative that is supposedly, at least, inspired, coming from Scripture in some way. We know how the narrative goes, generally speaking. The Chosen director, Dallas Jenkins, has He has defeated a plot twist in season 4 of his hit Jesus show, featuring the Savior choosing not to heal the Apostle Thomas's fiancée after a Roman official straight up murders her in front of them. According to Crosswalk headlines, the plot twist occurs at the end of season 4, episode 3, and sorry, spoiler alert if you're really into The Chosen, but I'm going to tell you anyway, when a Roman official, Quintus, grows irate at his inability to capture Jesus in a large crowd and begins swinging his sword. In his anger, Quintus stabs Rama, the fiancée of the Apostle Thomas, and Quintus then flees the scene. Rama, dying on the ground, bleeding and dying, she urges Thomas to stay with Jesus. Thomas then pleads with Jesus to raise her back to life. A tearful Jesus expresses remorse but responds, "It is not her time. I love you, Thomas. He loves you. I'm so sorry." Moments later, credits appear on the screen. We hesitate to think how many people will believe this story is somewhere in the scriptures. Thomas and Rama's relationship was frequently featured in The Chosen, and it will almost certainly play a crucial role in why Thomas is given the moniker Doubting Thomas following Jesus' resurrection. Oh, there was criticism over this. Of course, we include in the article, as we generally do, links if you are unclear about what The Chosen is, or some of Dallas Jenkins' I'd say recent, but over the last few years, statements when it comes to Mormonism, the gospel, the Chosen series itself, leaving the Transfiguration out, so on and so forth. You can read more about that over at protestia.com. Finally, last headline for this intelligence briefing: Jeff Orge encapsulates the Laodicean SBC. I recently wrote and posted a long-form article explaining why Jeff Orge's speech. He was supposed to give a report from the executive committee, but I guess maybe the tradition is he gets up there and preaches whatever sermon he wants to as president of the EC. But the first half of the EC report on the Tuesday of the annual meeting featured Jeff Orge getting up there and making it was a valiant attempt, I would say, at making a theological defense of the gospel card. I explain it in a much more long-form version. A fair number of references, theological explanations. I would recommend that if you are curious about why the SBC remains just so stubbornly lukewarm, this article would be for you to understand it. We'll be going into a little bit more detail on the next Protestia tonight about exactly what we mean by all of it, in case it's confusing. Do some Bible work, pull up some scriptures, especially it's in Galatians, where Jeff Orge was pulling from in his speech, where he basically finger wagged and chastised and rebuked Southern Baptists that do anything other than attempt to save souls, which is, of course, God's job. But it's explained in the article, and we will go over it in more detail on the next Protestia tonight. Stay tuned for that. Subscribe to this channel, by the way, on YouTube if you want a notification for when that comes up next. Thank you very much for joining me for this episode of the Intelligence Briefing for the 17th of June, 2024. Stay tuned to Protestia for all of your latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. I'll see you again next time. As always, Semper Reformanda.